What is going on, everyone? Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Brooklyn Boys Show. I am your host, Connor Long. Welcome in, everyone. Make sure you smash the like button, hit subscribe. Appreciate all you Brooklyn Net fans out there joining us right here on this Sunday evening, July 6th. 2025. Like I said, appreciate all of your support. Smash that like button and hit subscribe. It's completely free and it helps us grow significantly. I'm super happy to be joined by a special guest right here on the show. It is none other than Dylan, the man behind the Nets Press page on Instagram, Nets Press on Twitter, and the co-host of the BK Nothing But Nets podcast. Dylan, thank you so much for joining me today. And how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you for having me on. We got to chop it up a little bit backstage, and it was great getting to know you a little bit more. We had you on recently as well, so it was awesome for you to join. But you're doing great things, man. Keep it up.
I appreciate the kind words. I am super happy you are able to be here. For questions, comments, thoughts that you want Dylan and I to react to, you can throw those in the chat. We're certainly going to get into those. But where I really want to start with Summer League kicking off for the Brooklyn Nets in just 4 days, their first game on July 10th in Las Vegas against the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Nets have a lot of players on this roster right now. They have 17 players who you can argue a spot for on this team, not counting their two-way players already signed in Tosan Nwoma and Tyson Etienne. Who are the guys that you look at on the roster right now, or maybe with Brooklyn last year or signed this offseason, who you think could be on the outside looking in come Summer League time?
One guy that I'm kind of looking forward to watching is TJ Bamba out of Oregon. He signed as an undrafted rookie. I believe he was on an Exhibit 10 contract, if I'm not mistaken. He's somebody that I'm definitely looking forward to watch, just in terms of, maybe a player that's not being noticed enough. It's actually funny. He was the one that was guarding Danny Wolf when he hit that nice step back three. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him play. And then, of course, the rookies that we got. I'm excited to see how Demon does. I'm very excited to see how Drake Powell and Danny Wolf do as well. It'll be interesting to see how they try and split up the minutes between Demon, Traore, and Ben Seraph, all three mainly being playmaking guards. So it'll definitely see some of the rotations that they put out there come Summer League. But very excited to see those five out there, and of course Bamba to see how he does. Also Tucson, I mean, he was on the roster last season. He's getting a chance to play in Summer League as well this year, so we'll see if he's improved in any aspects of his game from last season.
Are you surprised at all that maybe a guy like Whitehead, who in essence could be considered a rookie among the fan base right now, given the injuries he suffered, how little he's played at the NBA level, were you surprised at all not to see him on this Summer League roster?
No, not really. I mean, it's kind of uncommon to see third-year guys in the Summer League nowadays. I don't even know if they're actually allowed to be on the roster.
They
Sometimes
are. There was one guy on the Warriors this year. Yeah.
Okay. But overall, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a big deal to not have him there. The whole goal is to have him healthy enough to start the season. I don't really think there's a reason to put him in a position to potentially get hurt. And he also spent the entire season last year in the G League. So you'd have to think the development's there. He's ready to go. This is kind of the time to let these younger guys who are trying to make a name for themselves to really get their minutes up and see how they do to start their professional careers.
What are your thoughts on Grant Nelson, who signed with the Nets as an undrafted free agent? Spent last year at Alabama. A lot of people are talking about Grant Nelson as the guy who can get the third two-way spot on the Nets roster. You're looking forward to watching Grant Nelson in Las Vegas. Do you think there's any chance he's able to crack a two-way contract with Brooklyn?
Yeah, I mean, at North Dakota State, he was actually really good. There was a lot of upside in his name. A lot of people had a little bit of buzz around him in terms of draft stock. Ultimately, he went to Bama and the production went down. So I think that there's definitely a hidden gem in there that could be found. It's definitely another player along with Bamba that I'm looking at as potential, who can get that last two-way spot. Because I believe Tucson has it right now, ETN has it, and then, of course, you have to figure out one final spot within the two ways. So I would definitely be excited to see him play. I mean, he's 6'11", does a little bit of everything. He could definitely showcase some good basketball skill if he's given the opportunity to. So I'm definitely looking forward to see him play as well.
Was able to average, 12, 15 points per game throughout his college career, could shoot from inside the three-point line. Grant Nelson can rebound. Certainly going to be an interesting player to watch for the Nets on their Summer League roster. You mentioned Nwoma and Etienne, the two guys who have the Nets the two current two-way contracts who are out there for the Nets. What are your thoughts on the Nets handing these guys two-way deals this early on before the Summer League? Do you think it's wise to hand these guys two-way deals out of the gate, or would you have preferred to maybe wait till midway through Summer League or towards the end of Summer League to dish out those deals?
I always like to see how people perform, so I would prefer to probably give it out later on. Tucson, I know that he was on the deal already. He was on it last season. They actually had him on a 2-year two-way deal. So his was already guaranteed. Of course, that could be non-guaranteed if he gets released. But as of right now, he owns that spot, and that's his to lose. But ultimately, I assume that he's going to keep his. ETN maybe is a guy that you could see be replaced if somebody really performs well. But overall, I definitely think that, waiting to see how these guys look and see who earns those contracts is usually the right route to go. So I probably wouldn't have given it to ETN right away. Tucson, he already earned his, so I would have kept his, but ultimately I would have left 2 spots available to see how these guys do this year.
Yeah, you always want to go into the summer league with an open mind because I think TJ Bamba, the guy you mentioned there, and Grant Nelson could certainly make a promising case during the two-way spot. And you just have 2 of them taken up now with ETN and Awoma, that leaving only 1 remaining as the summer league approaches here. I mean, the way I look at ETN is I don't think handing him a two-way deal makes sense. This guy was an impact player on Long Island last season, but when we saw him on Brooklyn, he put up numbers on awful shooting, averaging under 10 points per game. We didn't see him all that often because he kind of got phased out of the rotation early. I think this is a guy who's an impactful player in the G League, but you haven't really seen much of him at the NBA level. The way I think two-way contracts should be dished out for the Brooklyn Nets are guys you look at and you think could make impacts at the NBA level if called upon. Like, for example, Killian Hayes, when called upon last season, he made an impact for the Brooklyn Nets. I think the Nets should be targeting more of those guys than guys who the Nets have already tried to fit into the rotation, haven't really worked out. Awoma is a guy, though, I want to get your thoughts here, who I'd consider releasing. This guy was an abomination towards the end of the season last year. Couldn't shoot the ball, couldn't rebound, couldn't play make. I don't think he could average 20 points per game in the G League. He doesn't bring much to the table, Dylan. What is the thought process behind keeping Tosan Awoma?
Yeah, Tucson from Walmart is what we were calling him because we had no clue who he was at the beginning of last year. But, he showcased a hustle and a grit to his game that it seems the front office enjoyed. That's kind of the baseline into becoming a net at the start. But overall, I definitely don't think that this is a guy who's going to be a long-term fit in Brooklyn, whether that be on a two-way, an Exhibit 10, an actual roster spot. I could definitely see him being replaceable as well. Overall, though, it just really depends on, what the Nets are looking to do. If they feel that he's earned his spot and they want to see more of him, he's going to get it. If not, hopefully there's somebody, in summer league like a Grant Nelson or a TJ Bamba who can take over that spot, somebody who may be a little bit younger with more upside that you can kind of try and develop and build in through, Long Island and whatnot. So I definitely wouldn't say his position is set in stone. I would like to see, some new faces come into these two-way spots, some guys who actually can develop a bit further than what Tucson has. But it'll be interesting to see how they go about it because, like you said, there's already 2 of those 3 spots taken up on the two ways. Do they keep them? Do they replace them? Only time will tell.
We spoke about the guys, Dylan, who we think can make an impact on the summer league and earn a two-way contract. Let's talk about the guys currently on the Nets roster who you think could be on the chopping block as we enter summer league. Some cut candidates here. I mean, the Nets picked up 4 team options this offseason. Drew Timme, Jalen Wilson, Tyrese Martin, Keon Johnson being those 4 players. I don't think a roster spot's guaranteed for all 4 of those guys. You can get those guys in, or in general, who are players you're looking at right now who could be on the outside looking in a week or 2 from now?
Yeah, I mean, it's very weird how the Nets decided to go about this offseason so far. Of course, Cam Thomas hasn't been re-signed, and you also accepted all the team options on Drew Timme, Jalen Wilson, Keon Johnson, and Tyrese Martin. I thought that was a bit unorthodox. I only had 2 of those guys coming back simply because of roster spot issues. But, I would expect, it really depends. Does whoever performs, could these guys ultimately become released and signed on the two-way deals? Do they get released and just don't have a roster spot in general? I'm kind of in between that with Drew Timme right now. Does he deserve a full $2 million a year in a Nets rotational spot, or should he go back down to an Exhibit 10 or a two-way deal, right? And I think that's kind of where this whole Cam Thomas situation is coming into play. There's still cap space to be used to hit the minimum requirements, so they have to bring in somebody else to be able to hit that maximum. What is it, 90% of the cap that needs to be used before?
Yeah, they're still $17 million below the floor, I believe, as it stands.
Yeah. And as of right now, too, with how the market looks, right, and I'm sure that we'll get into it later on, but with the way that the market looks, no team can afford a guy like Cam Thomas. So using that remaining cap space, that $17 million, to bring him back whether he wants that money or not, that's the best offer he's going to get. So at that point, with Thomas back, I believe we'd have 18 players on the roster moving forward. There's got to be cuts or
Here's
trades made
the
within there.
Yeah, here's the current roster right now, not counting the two-way guys on this team. Here it is. So let's see. Let me zoom in for those who can't see it all that well. So the guards, assuming Cam Thomas is back, you have Cam Thomas, Nolan Traore, Ben Seraph, Keon Johnson, Drake Powell, Derek Whitehead, Terrence Mann, Yegor Devin, Zaire Williams, Michael Porter Jr., Tyrese Martin, Jalen Wilson, Noah Clowney, Drew Timme, Danny Wolf as your forwards, Nick Claxton and Day'Ron Sharpe as your centers. That's assuming that Nick Claxton remains on this team, which I do think, unfortunately, will be the outcome, and Cam Thomas resigns, which is also the most likely outcome out of those scenarios. So, I mean, what sets everything back really is the fact that you drafted all 5 of your rookies. Those guys are already taking up 5 of your 15 NBA roster spots. So there isn't much room left, which, again, the fact that giving away your two of your 3 two-way deals ahead of Summer League really doesn't make as much sense, because you want to optimize every single roster spot, given the fact that you have 5 rookies on this team. I mean, out of those 4 guys who the Nets exercise their team options, Timme, Johnson, Martin, and Wilson, which one do you think has the highest chance of making the roster?
I'd say Keon. They absolutely love him.
Yeah.
He may not have been the guy that we want shooting the ball as often as he was, but he showed a lot of grit and determination on the defensive end. He was picking guys up full court, some of the other team's best players, and he really showed that he could be a nice defensive piece on this roster. So if there was one out of the 4 that I would give a roster spot to, it would be Keon. Ultimately, like I said, I think 2 of those guys stay, 2 of them go. Jalen Wilson is a guy that I expected to be cut before even accepting his team option. So the fact that he was able to get that is impressive to me. I didn't think that he showcased any form of improvements from the year. I would say him and probably Tyrese Martin are the 2 guys on the outs for me. Timme at least brings a bit of versatility on the forward department, just because he's 6'9", 6'10". He's got the height to him to where he can play the 4.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a bit more versatile for what we need, especially after drafting 3 point guards. That's kind of where I think Tyrese Martin gets on the outs for that. So if it was my choice, I would say bring back Keon Johnson and Drew Timme to start the year and move on from Wilson and Martin.
With Timme, though, I don't want him to take away minutes from Danny Wolf.
I
don't want Drew Timme to take away minutes from Danny Wolf, because assuming Claxton's on this team, the centers and forwards are Nick Claxton, Day'Ron Sharpe, Noah Clowney, Danny Wolf, and then in your scenario, Drew Timme would be that 5th guy. Yeah. I'm more so prioritizing the development here of Noah Clowney again, because Noah Clowney's been in the NBA for multiple years now, but we still want to see him where he's shooting the 3 ball which I think he's able to do at a 35, 36% clip, which I know is a little high for a forward, especially of his size, but he's shown flashes and shades that he might be able to do that over the next few years. And Danny Wolf, the 7-footer who you could draft, who could shoot the rock, who could drive, who could play make for you. My biggest thing is I don't want Drew Timme to ultimately be taking away minutes from guys like Noah Clowney and Danny Wolf.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think that, you're kind of in that position where you need to figure out how to prioritize your youth. That was something that I thought should have been done last season, and it kind of wasn't taken seriously, right? I thought there was many scenarios where you could have run out rosters with Derek Whitehead out there, with Noah Clowney, Day'Ron Sharpe, Cam Thomas, but they prioritized some of the vets like Dennis Schroeder, Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton. And I think that's kind of what hurt them ultimately in what the end goal was supposed to be, which was a top 5 pick. Of course, they finished in the 6 overall odds, and they moved back down to 8. And, listen, if 5 of those games go differently, you're potentially looking at, Ace, Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, and Brooklyn, right? And that's kind of where this needs to be taken seriously this year. You beat Philly twice towards the end of the season last year. You beat Milwaukee 3 times with Giannis healthy. Those are games that, all right, you want to look good in until the 4th quarter, but take a backseat those final 2 minutes, especially when it's a close game. Those are losable games that'll help you in the odds race. So to me, they got to take that seriously this year. And the way that you do that is by prioritizing your youth. A lot of people are looking at the starting 5 next year and saying, oh, this could be like a play-in team. But if you really look at the depth of the rotation, it's all young. These aren't guys that are going to go out and win games down the stretch. They're not going to win the bench minutes, right? You're going to have a rotation probably consisting of Nolan Traore, Ben Seraph, maybe Derek Whitehead, and then of course Day'Ron Sharpe off the bench. Like that's not a rotation off the bench that's going to beat other teams in those minutes. So I'm expecting more losses next season. I had him at 21, 22 wins this past season. They ended up getting 26. This season, I expect, 19 to 21 should be the range of where they are.
I'm a lot more optimistic of a Nets fan than you are, so
Really?
we'll definitely touch on that a little bit
For
later.
sure.
But you mentioned a lot of the rookies there, so that's kind of what I want to get into next. The Nets have utilized Long Island as a team for a lot of rookies to develop for multiple years. And I mean, we saw Cam Thomas play valuable minutes on Long Island during his rookie season, which really helped him blossom as a player. We saw it with Derek Whitehead last year. Noah Clowney has taken that route. The next question to you is, I mean, which rookies do you look at and you think will spend premium time on Long Island this season, if any?
It's tough to say. I think Ben Seraph is definitely one that is going to be in the G League a lot, right? This is a guy who uh, the Nets front office has spoken very highly of. They think that there's a lot of potential in his game, but I don't think that that's something that necessarily needs to be utilized in terms of NBA minutes right away, just because of the fact that you drafted two high upside point guards already. Drake Powell, I could see definitely splitting time between the G League and the NBA. I'd love to see him more in the NBA
Yes.
than the G League, just because of how much
Athletic
potential he has.
defender, can shoot. Yeah,
Definitely.
Drake Powell is probably my favorite draft pick, if I'm being completely honest.
It's so tough because like I want to love this draft class, but not going up for that second lottery pick really set me off. And
Mhm.
we've all
And
had these
taking all
discussions.
5 players, by the way,
Yeah,
as well.
that's exactly the problem. And listen, I really loved Yegor Demon. He was a guy who I looked at as a top 7 player in this draft before the season began in college and come draft night. Um, I at one point he was not even projected to be a lottery pick. He was my dark horse to be a top 5 pick. And at one point in the college basketball season, he was projected to go 4th overall. So there's upside in his game. And I truly do think that it's a good pick. But my only problem with it is knowing that he probably is there at 13 with the Atlanta pick, right? And that's kind of where I'm splitting between like, okay, I understand wanting to get your guy, but if you're going to get your guy, you got to move up to get another guy, right? Especially when you're taking that much of a risk on a player who you are reaching for. Carter Bryant was there at 13, and Atlanta moved that 13th pick. If there was a world where you could have moved Cam Johnson and the 19th pick to Atlanta, I would have done it. If you could,
And we knew Cam Johnson, and we knew Atlanta was a landing spot for
was a
Cam
suitor
Johnson as
for
well.
him. Yeah,
Yeah.
they had been rumored as a suitor for him for a while. Um, and realistically, you got Terrence Mann, right? You could have done Cam Johnson and the 19th pick for Terrence Mann and the 13th pick. So it's got its wins, it's got its losses, but as of right now, and the reason why I graded it so harshly was just because one, you drafted 3 point guards, and two, you didn't trade up for a second lottery pick. If you could have
Exactly.
walked away with even if you do take all 5 picks, let's just say, if you were to have replaced Seraph with Rasheer Fleming, I would have given it a B, because
Yeah.
Fleming was a guy that I was extremely high on. There's not many guys in this league in general, let alone prospects, who come in at 6'9" with a 7'5" wingspan, who shoot 50-40 splits at the power forward position. He is somebody that I truly do think is like the next Nas Reed. So it's tough to see him get passed on, especially for him to fall into the second round.
For your third point guard as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, exactly, and
So
that's
Ben
where
Saraf, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
yeah,
I don't get the logic with Saraf at all. Like,
I don't
what's
get it either.
he can't
I
shoot,
don't
he
understand
can't
it.
really defend.
No.
And you can call him a playmaker. He has experience. Like that's no. But when you have a forward like Fleming sitting on the board right there, who could plug and play for you right away as your
Yep.
second power forward your first power forward off the bench. Really, I mean,
Even
it
Liam
doesn't make
McNeely
sense.
was on the board, and I'm not a McNeely guy whatsoever. He was one of the 6 guys that I was like, do not draft. I don't like his game whatsoever. But even him at 26 would have been a better pick than Seraph, right? I love the Wolf pick. I think it's great value. But at the end of the day, if you could have moved that 19th pick to move up to 13, if you could have walked away with Demon, Carter Bryant, let's just say you do take Nolan Traore at 22, because if you look at how the board was falling, you had Nolan Traore, Jace Richardson, and Yakachonis still available at 19. One of those guys is going to be available at 22, right?
Hmm.
If you look at how the board was falling, Yakachonis was going to Miami no matter what. They
Hmm.
wanted him badly, and they were able to get him at great value. 21 was what? Utah. They ended up trading with Washington. They weren't going to be taking Traore. And then at 22, I believe was it Atlanta who traded with, or no, it was Atlanta, and they ended up going with who? Asa Noel. They weren't going to pass him up. So
Yeah.
at 20, or I'm sorry, that was at 21. So at 22, you probably could have seen uh, Traore still be available, which is kind of why I'm like, again, why are you not trading up? Why are you not waiting for these guys who are falling? Um, But yeah, if you could have just replaced Seraph by trading up with Atlanta for Carter Bryant, I would have been much more happier with the draft.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you can't play all five of these rookies together. Like you physically can't construct a starting five with these five rookies. And I think I was big on the Nets going BPA. I
Yep,
personally didn't think Yegor Demon was the best player available. I thought Kamen Malawach was the
I agree.
best player available when the Nets selected with that 8th overall pick. I would have nothing would have made me happier than the Nets selecting Malawach at 8 and then shipping Nick Claxton off and getting 2 first-round picks from. Like nothing would have made
Yeah,
me happier than that. And then you have you can have a 4-5-10 and then of Dayron Sharp and Kamen Malawach. I think that would be a great fit in Brooklyn. I think that would be exactly what they need. You could erase the Wolf pick. You could take a forward with the Wolf pick. You could take an Ace in a well instead of taking Ben Sarov. Like it just opens up the board so much more than starting off with a guard when you already know you have so many other guards higher ranked on your board. And I think that's ultimately led them to take 3 guards. I think they just took the BPA approach pretty much to every pick, and it came back to bite them.
yeah. Well, I mean, first and foremost, if they were going off a BPA, whoever made that list of best player available should be fired.
Yeah.
Because
Ben Sarov.
if you're taking Ben Saraf over Danny Wolf, Rasheer Fleming, and Liam McNeely, you don't deserve a job. And that's just kind of my take on it. These are all guys who were better than Saraf, especially whether it came to mock drafts, draft analysts, whatever it may have been. Everybody had those guys over Saraf. So to me, it wasn't a logical pick. And again, I think that's where a lot of the frustration is coming from. You paid a premium to get your picks back, and you didn't take it seriously. The least you could do is move up for that second lottery pick, especially building up anticipation for 2 straight months with reports flying out left and right saying that the Nets are the most aggressive team trying to move up for a second lottery pick. The fact that you sat there and picked all of them was very disappointing. And again, a big problem that can come with that is you have too much youth, right? There's ways that you can build youth and develop them at a steady pace until you have too many in 1 year, right? And I think that's the problem. Having 5 rookies that you're trying to develop all at once kind of takes away from certain guys getting the necessary development that they need, especially when you're drafting multiple players in the same position. Like I said, if you would have replaced the Saraf pick with a Fleming or a McNeely, okay, you would have walked away with 2 guards, 2 forwards, and a big. You can develop that. You can work around that. But when you're drafting 3 guards, that's where it gets a bit difficult, especially 3 guards who do very similar things in the playmaking department. They can't just keep passing it back and forth with one another. Somebody needs to take the shot, right? And I think that's kind of where a lot of that frustration is building from the Nets fan base side of things, which I completely agree with. I'm on that side.
That's my take with Igor Demon. Like if he could develop to the point where he's giving you, 50, 45, 50% from the field, and he could shoot the 3 ball at a 35, 36% mark, then I think he's going to be a good player. But if he shoots the 3 ball at under 30% and he's not giving you great numbers from inside from the field, like I just don't think the playmaking point, like to be an elite point guard at the NBA level, you have to be able to consistently shoot the ball.
Yeah.
And I think if Yegor Demon wants to be great, he needs to develop his shot. That's the bottom line for the Brooklyn Nets 2025 draft class. Appreciate you all tuning in. Make sure you smash that like button. Hit subscribe on your way to the building. Connor and Dylan right here with you on a Sunday edition of the Brooklyn Boys Show. Appreciate all your support, through all your questions, comments, thoughts in the chat. We're going to start digging into those right now. Dylan,
By the way, congrats on 300 subs. You just said it.
I appreciate it. I was just about to address that. So thank you, Dylan, for mentioning it there. I appreciate you all. Thank you for 300 subs. Keep it going, guys. Smash that like and hit subscribe. Dylan and I were talking about it before the show. Every single person who stumbles upon our content should be hitting subscribe because it is completely free and it helps creators like us grow significantly. So please keep hitting subscribe, keep supporting us, and keep helping this channel grow. It really does go a long way. Dylan, Derek Whitehead is watching the show and referring to potential cut candidates. He says, please not Whitehead. So you think Derek Whitehead could be a cut candidate? I think if he was really on the roster bubble, he would be on this summer league roster.
Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere. They've had high upside in him since the moment they drafted him. And again, that was another frustrating draft class for me. I had, Cam Whitmore as a guy that I really wanted to trade up for, whether it was 2 spots, 3 spots, whatever it may have been. This was a guy who was projected to go top 10 prior to his injury, and he fell all the way to 20. He went to Houston. Houston just shipped him off. This is a guy who you could have moved up for, right? That was another draft class that I was really frustrated with, like I said, because you took Noah Clowney, a guy who was projected to go early to mid second round. You took him at 21. And then you took Derek Whitehead at 22, who was dealing with some major injuries. But Whitehead's a guy who was projected to be lottery prior to that injury. The upside's still there on him, but a bit of the athleticism has dwindled since these injuries. So it'll be interesting to see how he is utilized this upcoming season. Are they going to put him on a minutes restriction? Are they going to allow him to let loose and go out there and do what he used to do? It really depends on how they feel this rotation is going to play out. But at the end of the day, when you draft a guy like Drake Powell, you have to think that that's his replacement at some point in time. And Powell, to me, has much more upside currently than Whitehead does now. So I wouldn't cut Whitehead, but at some point, if you include him in a trade as like a salary filler or just a salary dump, it wouldn't surprise me.
Do you think Sean Marks will more likely keep Claxton until trade deadline or trade him this offseason?
The problem is whatever we think he doesn't do, right? And we've all been expecting Nick Claxton to be traded, and now we're kind of getting to the point where we expect him to be on the team this upcoming season. There's still a couple of teams that I think do have interest in Claxton, one of which I know based on some people that I've spoken to, which is the Charlotte Hornets. They're a team who just got rid of Mark Williams. They didn't draft the big this year. They can definitely use a starting caliber big man, and not to mention Nick Claxton grew up only 2.5, 3 hours outside of Charlotte. So there's definitely some interest there within Charlotte. Jeff Peterson
He's a Greensboro guy, right?
I believe. No, he was a South Carolina guy. He played with John Morant and Zion Williamson on their AAU.
That's what it was. And then he went to Georgia for college.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yep. And
Greensboro is South Carolina.
Greensboro is North Carolina. Greensville is South Carolina.
Where's Nick Claxton? Greenville.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of. Where Nick Claxton.
That's about 2 hours outside of where I'm at in South Carolina. Awesome. But yeah, I know that Charlotte does have interest. Jeff Peterson was the assistant GM during the time frame of when we drafted him. He was a big advocate in drafting him. So there's definitely some interest there. And again, it makes perfect sense. They have Josh Green, who's making $13 million. They have Grant Williams, who's making $13 million. They have a simple salary match in Miles Bridges, who's making $25 million. There's different avenues and routes where Charlotte does have an easy package to acquire Nick Claxton. It just depends on whether or not Marks wants to move him and if Charlotte's going to actually, jump on that opportunity. So Charlotte's a team I would look out for. Washington's another team that definitely does make a lot of sense. Building that dual threat big with him and Sarr would make a lot of sense for their core in their future. And he also fits the timeline. Yeah. So it's again, it just depends on which teams are looking to jump on a starting center as of right now. But like I said, when you expect something to be done, usually Marks does the opposite. And we're kind of getting to that point where we're expecting Claxton to be on the team. So I don't want to say anything because I would like to see him get traded. But, we'll see. Hopefully something happens. They have to create a roster spot. So it would make sense to try and move off of him for some guys that you could either buy out or, add to this rotation and move on from some of those 4 team options that you brought back.
That's why Gabe Vincent and Maxi Kleber would have made sense because you could just buy those 2 out, keep that 1 first-round pick, and then dump Claxton's salary off to LA. Exactly. That's what the Lakers would have made so much sense as a destination, but obviously that's no longer on the table with DeAndre Ayton there landing in LA. Jonathan says, do you guys see the Hornets as a last possible team that might want to trade for Claxton? Does a Grant Williams, Josh Green, and draft capital package for Claxton work? Jonathan, we just spoke about the Hornets. Dylan, thoughts on that package?
Yeah, that's the exact package that I've been kind of proposing for a while now. Like I said, both make around $13 million, so that's would eat back some contracts for 2 years, but ultimately you're getting off of 1 full year of Claxton's contract. These are also 2 guys who match up with the Michael Porter Jr. contract. So realistically, Junior is going to be making $40 million next year. These 2 are going to be making 13, so that's 26. You could be looking up to $66 million plus in cap space for the 2027 offseason, which, if you take a look at, is probably the most stacked free agency class we've seen in a very long time. There's probably about 40 plus recognizable names that you can look into. Probably about 2 handful worth of stars that could also potentially be available, whether they opt out of their player options or if they hit unrestricted free agency. So to me, if you're the Nets, building a roster that consists of guys on 2-year deals or less is definitely the route to go, just because of how stacked that 2027 free agency class is going to be. And I think that's also a realistic time frame of when the Nets can start looking to compete. You would be able to have 2 full years of development for this class that you just took, and you'd have 1 full year of development for next year's class. I think that's enough time frame to give these guys opportunities to figure out who they are as NBA players, while also being able to put a competitive roster around them as well. So I would love to see a Nick Claxton trade just as much as the next person. And Charlotte is the team that I suspect to be the most interested at this point in time, especially with how the rest of these teams have maneuvered, like Indiana, Los Angeles. Those were 2 teams that I had pinned to Claxton for a while as well. but ultimately they made moves on other big men, not named Nick Claxton. So to me right now, I think Charlotte and Washington are the two teams that could potentially show interest within the next 6 months, but hopefully somebody does sooner rather than later.
Keon Johnson isn't needed for this team. Powell and Zaire fit more than Keon. Completely agree with you, but I think Keon Johnson is viewed by Jordy Fernandez as like a leader who's an extended coach on the court, who's a defensive threat. I don't like Keon Johnson at all. I side with Gary on this. Not a big Keon Johnson fan by any measure. I don't think he should be on this team, but I think Jordy really likes him for locker room reasons, and I think Jordy thinks he's a scrappy player. So I see Keon Johnson still being a role player on this team this year.
I agree. We kind of touched base on that before too. He's earned his respect. He's hustled. He's shown the Brooklyn grit. The whole slogan that they love to live by. That's never won a championship, by the way. But
Yeah,
yeah, like listen, I'm a big guy. I'm a Steelers and Yankees fan, right? And our whole thing is the standard, right?
Yeah.
You're either a championship team or you're a bust. And to me, that's kind of the approach that the Nets need to shift into at some point. Is we got to stop trying to play this whole respectable franchise. We're here for grit and hustle players and guys who work hard.
Just win.
No, just give me talent and give me wins. That's all I care about. But yeah, Keon's earned his spot in terms of what they like to see. So I don't suspect him to be anywhere this season, unless if he's a throw-in for a trade. But other than that, I think he's here.
Tariq Whitehead says, can we afford Kuminga and CT? I mean, they absolutely can. They're still $17 million below the salary for. I mean, you put out a post on Instagram, Dylan, right before we went live. Would you rather see Jonathan Kuminga or Cam Thomas in a Nets uniform? I'm going to throw that question to you because I know I've heard you and Gary and I tend to agree more that we both really, really like Cam Thomas. I know you're kind of less in love with Cam Thomas than we are, but who would you rather see in a Nets uniform, Jonathan Kuminga or Cam Thomas?
I'm going to get a lot of hate. You guys know my take on this. To me, if you look at the current construction of this roster, it's built because of Cam Thomas, and that's simply because he has so many deficiencies to his game. And I think that if you're looking to really build a proper roster around these rookies, and just for the future, a guy like Jonathan Kuminga makes more sense, right? He's a 6'7" wing who can score. He can rebound better than Thomas. He can defend better than Thomas. And I think that's something that needs to be looked into a bit more. How I see Traore and Demon is kind of like how I see Halliburton and Nembhard, right? You'd have Demon as your Halliburton and Traore as your potential Andrew Nembhard.
I think Cam Thomas would be more of the Halliburton because Halliburton's the guy who can facilitate and shoot the ball from anywhere on the court. Yegor Demon can't shoot. Yegor Demon would fit more in the Ben Simmons type role.
Realistically, if I'm giving Demon a comp, it's Josh Giddey, right? If you look at how Josh Giddey's career has started compared to how it is now, he was again in that same.
College.
He was a horrible shooter. He was not anything special, but I mean, I'm going to pull up the stats right now. I'm pretty sure he was a 32% shooter this past season from three, if I'm not mistaken. Which again, not great. It could be. Let me double check. This past season, oh no, he shot 37.8% from three.
Yeah, I don't remember him being that awful of a shooter until before really, really early on in his career where he was shooting 30 or below.
Yeah. I was going to say it was his rookie season, he shot 26% from three. His second year, he shot 32.5. His third year, he shot 33.7. And this past season, he shot 37.8. And he also took the most three-point attempts per game that he has in his career this year as well. So that's kind of where I see the trajectory of Yegor Demon, right? Josh Giddey went from 12.5 points his rookie year. He had 15 points this year. His rookie year, he had 7.8 rebounds. This year, he had 8.1. His rookie year, he had 6.4 assists. This year, he had 7.2. I didn't realize he was that good in his rookie year. But there's been continuous progression in his game. And if you really look at Giddey's second half of the season, that's where he started to look like a potential all-star. He was putting up those 20, 10, and 10 games left and right. So that's kind of where I see the realistic comp for Demon. And again, eighth overall pick, if he's a guy that can be your starting point guard and give you 18, 8, and 8 a night in 3 years from now, I can live with that. That's a great point guard to have for your future.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where the NBA is going with the guards, right? Is the bigger guards, the guys who can do a little bit of everything. Demon showcased that he's the best playmaker in this draft. Now it's, can he, play the physical NBA style game that maybe he wasn't used to in college or overseas? And I think that's where you're going to start seeing his development. So as a floor spacer and just more physicality is definitely the two things I want to see him build off of. But again, whether you want to say Halliburton or Giddey, whichever one you want to use, that's how I see Demon. And I see Traore as like the Andrew Nembhard of this team. So to me, adding a guy like Kuminga could be your Benedict Mathurin to what the Pacers were this year. So kind of building something similar to Indiana, just younger, still some upside that needs to be developed.
I completely understand your thought process. I just disagree because I'm a huge Cam Thomas fan, first off. And I think if you get rid of Cam Thomas, you're not scoring over 100 points per game at all this season. Like, you have no scorer. Cam Thomas, I think, is your lead scorer, where, like, I know that's all he could do. He could really only score the ball. He could shoot the ball from anywhere on the court. That's really all he can do. But that is still such a valuable asset at the NBA level, to be able to hit a shot from wherever on the court, to be able to go and get you a bucket whenever you need it. I think that's what Cam Thomas is. I think he's your reliable scorer who can truly get you 23, 24 points per game. I know we saw flashes of it last year in only 20 games. This is a guy who's able to stay healthy. I think he can easily be a top 5 point guard at the NBA level. I like Kuminga a lot as a player. Kuminga, though, you're pretty much betting solely on upside. I think Cam Thomas has proven that he's able to score and go get you buckets at the NBA level. I think Kuminga is more of a shot in the dark, that you're taking a bit of a risk. You're taking a little bit of a bet on his athleticism and upside. And plus, like, where does he really slot into the Nets rotation? That's the question. They have so many small forwards and power forwards on this roster. I'm assuming you'd say he'd be the power forward, maybe an MPJ. Where would you think Jonathan Kuminga would slot in?
So I'm glad you asked. So to me, if you're adding Kuminga, you're moving Cam Thomas and Nick Claxton, of course, right? So whatever you get in return for them, you get in return. But let's just say it is the Charlotte trade for Nick Claxton, right? Josh Green and Grant Williams, they're not starting on this team.
Not at all.
Whatever you do with Cam Thomas, whether that is a sign-in trade with him to Golden State, or if you have to expand that and send him elsewhere, let's just say the core I would have is Demon at the 1, Traore at the 2, Kuminga at the 3, Porter Jr. at the 4, Sharp at the 5. I think that provides Demon with the best case scenario in terms of his rookie year as a facilitator, while also giving him an option to, potentially space the floor as well. You would have, let's see, Traore can space the floor. It's not efficient yet, but he has shown flashes of it. Kuminga can space the floor. Michael Porter Jr. is one of the best spot-up three-point shooters in the league, and Sharp's a big improvement as a floor spacer than Claxton was. So I think that gives the overall roster just a very versatile but team-friendly, kind of give Demon the reins of facilitating that offense, and I think that's what they need to focus on this year, right? You took a guy at 8th overall. You haven't had a lottery pick in 15 years, right? You got to prioritize that at some point, and I think that this is the year, bless you, that this is the year that you have to prioritize that youth and development. So that's kind of my case on it. To me, if you bring back Cam Thomas, you're kind of diminishing Demon as the lead ball handler while also moving Traore to the bench. Okay, now you're going to have another problem with Traore and Saraf as who the point guard is of that, rotation. I think you kind of just have to figure out what you want in the near future, which is, do you want to see if Cam Thomas can develop a secondary aspect to his game, or do you want these young guys to fully develop so you can contend here in the near future? My biggest problem with Thomas is I don't hate Cam Thomas. I see Lou's always in my chat. Shout out to him. But I don't hate Cam Thomas. I actually really began to like him this past season in the 25 game sample size that he was able to play. My problem is, though, I don't value scoring as much as others do. I think that, yes, you do need a very gifted scorer on your team to be anything special. But when that player doesn't do it at league efficiency or below league efficiency average, that to me is where I don't value it. And Cam Thomas has been a guy who traditionally has not been an incredibly efficient scorer, who has been a very ball dominant, at the end of the day, shot chucker, who, again, these are all just some things that have been proven, some things that could be opinion based, but I understand that he was forced to take a couple of grenades here and there throughout the season. He really didn't have people to take those last shots. Completely respect that. I understand it. But at the end of the day, I'm a big stats guy. And the saying that I like to use is men lie, women lie, but numbers don't. And when you're looking at Cam Thomas's efficiency numbers over the past 4 years that he's been in the league, I don't see him as your 1 through 3 option on a contending team. Right? To me, he reminds me more of a Lou Williams or a Norman Powell, just lesser defensively. And until he develops a second aspect to his game that could be a borderline, if not star level aspect to his game, then I don't know where he fits long term.
I understand where you're coming from. I just think he could be a piece of this championship team that you're talking about, a team that is going to want to contend in a few years. I mean, if he takes away time from Nolan Traore, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, personally, because I think Gabriel Damage is only going to help Cam Thomas grow as a player, assuming that he's back on this team. Like, him being able to dish the ball out, find Thomas in the corner, I think the catch and shoot game is going to look really, really nice this season. I think he's only going to elevate Cam Thomas's game. So I understand both sides of the spectrum here. It's just going to be interesting to see. You know, I still am under the assumption that he's going to be back on this team. I don't think there's much of a market for him. I mean, where I'm just confused, I think it's going to be a 1-year deal where he's a free agent next year and he walks and gets a big contract. From what we've seen, really, it's no secret. It's no inside information. From what we've seen, the Nets really don't seem to love Cam Thomas. He's not a guy who they put out for 35 minutes every single night. There were games under Jacques Vaughn, especially, where he would score 35, 40 points and you wouldn't see him the next game. The Nets clearly don't seem to have this unwavering love for Cam Thomas. That's certainly another
thing that I want to throw in also is, and again, this isn't hate, but when you look at how the NBA is now, how many guys can you say are undersized two guards whose main aspect of their game is scoring? How many of those guys can you say are 1 through 3 options in the NBA? You know, like Norman Powell is very similar, an undersized two guard whose primary, high NBA caliber capability to his game is scoring. And without Kawhi being hurt, he wasn't doing what he was doing this past season. And this was the best season of his career. And this is year 9, 10 for him. You know, to me, this is a very similar case where you're dealing with an undersized two guard and you're also playing in a league that is very wing heavy, right? When you look at some of the best teams in the league, you got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown over in Boston. You have Evan Mobley in Cleveland. You know, there's a lot of wings need to be your 1 through 3 options. Undersized guards have always had issues come playoff time, right? Donovan Mitchell, one of the most gifted players in the league right now, but he can't stay healthy enough come playoff time, nor can he win these games down the stretch. And he's an incredibly gifted scorer. And he also has a second aspect to his game that Cam Thomas doesn't, which is playmaking. So to me, that's where the limitation on Thomas is in terms of his potential. I think he's a great scorer. I think he's incredibly gifted. He's by far one of the best tough shot scorers in this league. But how far can scoring take you when you have so many deficiencies? And I think that's where the problem's going to be long term, which is why, again, I'd be a little bit more willing to take the bet on Kuminga simply because of his versatility on both ends of the floor, and especially in a position of need in Brooklyn, which is a wing, right? I don't think Zaire as a full-time starting 3 makes much sense. And at that point, what are you going to do? You're going to move MPJ to the 3 and put Clowney at the 4. You're kind of limiting, you know, the game that you have for these guards. So I'm a big guy in terms of versatility, right? I don't want a team that's kind of stuck on doing the same thing. You know, you have Cam Thomas who can score, but all right, now you have Yegor Demon, Nolan Traore. These are guys who can't really space the floor as well. So you're limiting yourself there. Noah Clowney can't stay healthy enough because of his ankle issues. Nick Claxton can't space the floor. Day'Ron Sharpe's not an incredibly gifted or efficient floor spacer, and he's also not good enough to fully play down low. So it's like you have a lot of guys on your roster already who have limitations. That's why I'm kind of looking at more versatile players that can do multiple things.
I understand it 1,000%. I think that's the really interesting thing about this Cam Thomas debate. There's a lot of people like me who are really big on Cam Thomas and want him to be here.
Oh, don't worry. I'm getting flooded in my comments right now. I think I got over 100 comments within an hour of people telling me that I'm delusional for even questioning this. Yeah, 115 comments within 2 hours. And I'm getting absolutely shit on. We'll use that. But,
if anyone wants to come into my Daily Jets podcast, you'll see a lot of my takes there do not go over well. And you know, that's the thing. Like there's, you know, that's a lot of people agree with my takes about the Jets. And same thing with the Nets. So I think that's really interesting watching fans go back and forth. I think that's the beauty about, you know, having a strong alliance to a sports team, 1,000%. So appreciate the insight there. We got a ton of comments, so keep those coming. We're going to try to rapid fire through because we have a bunch of comments here on the show. My guy Matthew Heisman, the DMV Football Gauntlet, 299 subs. Hit that sub button, get my guy Connor up to 300. Matthew, appreciate the kind words. We hit 300, but guys, keep hitting subscribe. Everyone subscribe to Matthew's channel, DMV Football Gauntlet. He does great work, so be sure to sub to him. Jonathan says, who can Brooklyn use the remaining $17 million cap space to absorb? I think it would be a Cam Thomas extension. And what I saw, I forgot who the exact writer was, but right before the show started, I was reading an article, and I saw from CBS Sports that someone linked the Nets as a third team to potentially help facilitate an Anthony Simons deal to Boston. So maybe
Okay.
that's something to look out for. But I think
Did they specifically mention who Boston would be sending Simons to?
I did not see that. Wait,
Because if I'm not mistaken, I saw him linked to the Clippers a while back. So I'm not sure
so
if it's them.
it's no. What it is let me try to here. Let me try to pull. Let me try to find this on this. Wait, this was where were we here? I will try to find this. I know it was from CBS Sports. I saw it on Twitter. I'll try to find this as I look to find it. Answer this question here from Jonathan. I just think the last big move is a Cam Thomas extension.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to think at some point he gets extended, just because how many more days of free agency are we going to go without doing a single thing and not bringing back the focal point of this past season? If it's my guess, and personally what I would do, you're dealing with a market that isn't available for him at this time. And because of the lack of cap space and the lack of teams interested, he doesn't have a say in what he gets. And I think that's where some people are kind of having a problem. Like my biggest thing is I've always been a person that cheers for the name on the front of the jersey, not the back. I've had that problem before where I absolutely loved the player and thought he was, the greatest thing since sliced bread. But, then they leave and you're like, oh, well, okay, I'm still a fan of the team. Screw this guy. It's kind of similar with Cam Thomas, where you're at that point where he wants something, but he doesn't have a say in it. And if he's going to cause an issue over it, then I have no problem getting rid of him. To me, if it's my decision, I look at him right now and I say 3-year deal, $18 million a year. You can have a player option to opt out after the second year. So the third year can be optional to you. But that's what I'm giving him. I'm not overpaying for a guy who doesn't have a market. There's no competition for the Nets in potentially losing him, right? The closest team with cap space, I believe, at the start of the offseason was Charlotte or Memphis, and they were at 15 million. So to me, I'd be petty. I'd be like, here's 15.1. You can take this or you can leave it. But to me, if he comes back on a qualifying offer, to me, I would trade him just because I'm not taking the risk of losing somebody of his talent for nothing in unrestricted free agency. At that point, it's all right. We gave you the offer. You wanted to bet on yourself, but I don't trust you enough to come back to us this upcoming offseason. So
who would you look to trade him for? Would that be in a Kuminga deal?
It depends because it's like, what is his qualifying offer? It's what, 8 to 11 million, somewhere in that range, I believe.
Was the one they tendered?
Yeah.
5.99 million.
Oof. Yeah, see, like you can't. That's not of his value, and that's the problem, right? You can't get something of value in return unless if you're looking at draft compensation. So it's like, at that point, what are you getting out of him? You would probably have to package somebody with him, or you'd have to just take back draft compensation rather than somebody of talent. Which is why, again, I'm more so interested in trying to lock him down on a long-term player option deal, just because, listen, play this season, see how you do. If you raise your value and we find, say the Nets land the number 1 pick next year and they get Darren Peterson. I'm sorry, Cam Thomas fans, but I'm prioritizing Darren Peterson and Yegor Demon more than I am Cam Thomas. That's how that works. These guys were drafted higher. They're younger. They're on rookie deals. You got to prioritize them. So to me, it's like, you got to just, I don't see a realistic scenario where Cam Thomas is on the team beyond this season. Whether it's this offseason being traded at the deadline because he refused a contract and he's an expiring contract, or whether it's next offseason where, let's say you get a Darren Peterson, you have Yegor Demon, and it's like, all right, we got to move on from you. We have too many guards. You're the guy with the highest value currently. Go out and get us something good in return. So he's the example that I've been using for him a lot is he's stuck in that D'Angelo Russell position for when we got Kevin Durant, right? D'Lo was that young up-and-coming guy that we got. Everybody thought he was going to be a multi-time All-Star after that All-Star season he had. But what happened? The moment the Nets were ready to win and contend, and they had the cap space to do so, they used him in a sign and trade to get Kevin Durant. And I see that as a similar position with Cam Thomas. Bright, young, potential star in the making, but when the time comes where something better approaches, he's the first guy out the door. And it's unfortunate because I do like him, and I do think that there are some upsides to his game that could still be reached. It's just, how much more time do they want to give him? He's entering year 5.
I completely understand where you're coming from. Lou says, my only question is, what the hell does Dylan Tat say? That's an FSU Knowles hat, correct?
Yes, sir. FSU. listen, I watched an FSU versus Notre Dame game when I was like 4. I was like, those are cool jerseys. Let me just rock with them. So I'm not like an avid college football watcher, but I'll watch a couple of games here and there. I just like the colorway.
There we go. Jonathan, in a worst case scenario, Thomas doesn't want to take a big 2-year pay cut contract. What are realistic sign and trade destinations for Cam? Also, is Powell a potential replacement for CT?
I view Powell as more of a 3. Even though he's a bit undersized, he's 6'6", he has that athleticism and versatility defensively where I could see him being a 3. Of course, it would probably be better for him to be a 2, but again, the offensive capability of his game, at least entering the league, isn't of a shooting guard. So, it just depends on the development. Does he show what he used to do in high school at the NBA level where he was able to score the ball from all 3 levels of the floor? Or does he look to be more of a, high caliber 3-and-D role player? Right now I see him as like a Herb Jones-like player. He has the athleticism. He has the defensive, perimeter shot blocking ability. He has all of that at an elite level. But can he develop the offensive game is what's going to really matter. If he can develop the offensive game, I think you're looking at Trey Murphy 2.0.
Okay. Very, very interesting. I think Powell has the potential to be a better defensive player than Trey Murphy. He's just so young. He has so much athleticism. I think you can be looking at Drake Powell in just a few years, and he's one of the best defensive forwards in the league. I mean, I think this is a guy who could guard multiple positions for you. I think he's going to be a true threat on this team, and I think he just brings so many different aspects of basketball to Brooklyn. I think that's going to be a huge reason why I think he ultimately thrives for the Nets.
100%.
Lou says, Derek Whitehead better not be in the G League all year. It's time to step to the big leagues. If I don't see anything in Derek Whitehead this year, I'm just giving up on him. It's like, dude, I know you've been injured. I know you've been injured, but last year you were playing promising basketball. Then you request to go down in the G League. It's like, come on, man. What is this?
Not a good look.
Yeah, what is this going to be? His third NBA season? Third or fourth year?
This is going to be his 3rd year. And that was another thing that I was going to touch on too. I'm a big guy in like, if you're not who you are by year 3, clearly it's either our fault or your fault. And there's no in between. Like injuries, inefficiencies to the game, lack of certain aspects to your game, whatever it may be. There are certain guys who can develop on their drafted teams, and there's just some guys who can't. Like if you look at Jabari Smith Jr., this was a dude who was drafted in the top 6, and he's never reached that potential. Why? Because Houston's never really prioritized his development. And I think that's where the problem is with Cam Thomas. Brooklyn doesn't prioritize him as a key focal point to this team long term. They view him as a guy who can get them through the rebuild, who can put up a couple of great scoring nights. But outside of that, there's a lot of deficiencies to his game. And I think that's where the problem is if he was to go somewhere where he's valued and can get the keys to the team, then maybe you're looking at a different player. But a lot of times, certain guys who are playing poorly on certain teams that they're drafted to is because they're not being properly utilized and developed. Like, look at Cam Whitmore, a guy who was supposed to go top 10, showed great flashes of being a really high caliber forward in this league, but couldn't find minutes in Houston. So what happens? They shipped him off to a team that he actually preferred to go to, a team that they were willing to send him to, knowing that he'll get opportunities. I kind of see that with Cam Thomas. He's reached a certain point with us where you're not seeing more to his game. So is that our fault, or is that just him as a player? I don't know if you can write
off on that, though. He played only 22 games last year. Like, and availability is the best ability. I'm the biggest preacher of that, 100%. Would you be okay maybe if you but what if the Nets maybe had Cam Thomas for, when's the extension deadline? February?
Somewhere around that range, yeah.
Somewhere in February. Would you be comfortable if the Nets extended them 1 year, $13 million deal, for example? No option. Just 1 year, $13 million deal.
In February?
No, right now. Right now, they sent him 1 year, $13 million deal. He's an unrestricted free agent as it stands next year, no matter what. And he's playing 50 games, 40 games by the time it comes February. And he's averaging 23 points per game. He's shooting the 3-ball, 38, 39% clip. He's increased his efficiency slightly. Would then you be okay maybe handing him a 4-year, $90 million deal, 4-year, $100 million contract?
Is he averaging 4 or more assists a game?
Say 4. 3.5, 4.
Does he look like a cone defensively?
Pretty much stays the same defensively.
See, it's like 4 years, $90 million. What's that? Like 23.5 a year?
It's what Anthony
And I mean,
Simons got last offseason.
and I was a huge Anthony Simons guy, and look what's happened with him. You know, like
I mean, he hasn't been terrible, but he hasn't lived up to the
no,
contract.
and that's the exact problem, right? And again, that's another example of like a team that doesn't properly utilize a player's development, right? He sat behind Damian Lillard for too long. He played off ball to Damian Lillard for too long. They drafted Scoot Henderson to then put Anthony Simons off ball again. It's like prioritize the kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I wanted Anthony Simons in Brooklyn for the longest time. I still have the jersey swap that I made 3 years ago of him. Like I absolutely love Anthony Simons, but he's another prime example of teams not focusing on the development of a player with such high upside of Simons. You know, like to me, that's where again I see Thomas. It's I don't want to see him here if it's not on a 3-year deal with a player option. And that's my only problem. Like unless if you have the commitment knowing that he's here and he has no way of leaving you without you trading him, that I'm good with. But as soon as you're talking about 1-year deals, you got to remember who he once played with, right? He played with two of the most pettiest contract dudes in the league in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. You know, Kyrie didn't accept an extension with Brooklyn once because he was so petty and because of the issues that he had with Joe Tsai. KD requested to trade out twice. You know, like these are guys that he's grown up around and have learned around. And these are also guys that have highly praised him. You don't think that he's learning a little bit of stuff off of them? I don't want to play that game where I got a guy egotistically looking for money and years on a deal that he doesn't deserve. So it's either get that 3-year contract done at market value, which to me is that 17 to 20 million range per year, or figure out a way to move him just because I don't want to take the risk of losing somebody of his caliber for free.
Jonathan says that Sean Marks make another mistake not trading two of his 16 plus second round picks for Cam Whitmore. I mean, I'm not going to call it a mistake. They clearly weren't enamored with him during the pre-draft process. There's no spot for him on this team right now. I mean, would it have been nice to add another young ascending role player? Sure, but I'm not kicking myself over it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that it would have been a great bet for Marks to take, but the problem is Houston worked with Whitmore to get him to a destination that they both felt was fitting for him in terms of production. And Washington, it looked like had the role for him where he could potentially thrive off of. So who knows if Brooklyn inquired for him? I know that he was a player of interest previously with Brooklyn, but who knows? It seemed like this was a coordinated trade between the two parties that got him to the position that he wanted to be in.
Greg H, expectations for NBA Summer League for the Nets, and do y'all think Jaeger can improve a few areas, including his shots? What do you got, Dylan?
Listen, I think the improvements have shown. If you watched Demon throughout college, he started off the season incredibly well. He had a really rough middle part and towards the end of the regular season. But when it came to conference championship play and the NCAA tournament, he looked great. And if you look at his NBA draft combine, he shot lights out. So to me, I think the improvements are already made. Is now just, can he do it while being guarded in a 10-man game? It really just depends on that aspect. So for me, I think the improvements are already made. Now it's just time for him to show it in a 5-on-5 game.
I agree. I think if he shoots the way he does right now and he's still a playmaker, he's a role player. But if he's able to develop into a consistent three-point shooter and an efficient shooter all around, I think he's going to be a very, very good point guard at the NBA level.
Like I said, Josh Giddey is what I look at. Just give me 18, 8, and 8. Give me 37% from three. I can't ask for anything more than that from an 8.
That's a top 5, top 10 guard at the NBA.
I agree. And that's what I'm saying. At 6'9", right, you have to think the physicality to his game. If he can put on maybe 15 pounds of muscle, you're talking about a deadly rebounder at the guard position while also being the best vision passer in this draft class. Let the scoring come. That's something that he shouldn't have an issue with. It's not like he's extremely unathletic like Luka is currently. If you watch his college tape, he was blowing by some people, finishing at the rim, above the rim, whatever you want to say. Like he was getting to his spots. To me, it's just, again, it's all about the 3-point spacing and the physicality. If he can figure out those two things, you're looking at a really good point guard in this league and potentially the franchise point guard.
Jonathan says, is Kyle Kuzma and the Bucks 2031 first for Cam Thomas a realistic sign and trade scenario? You're selling CT a little short there, Jonathan.
Probably not, only because they were a second apron team. I'm pretty sure because of the restructuring of Dame's contract, they're below the second apron, but I'm not sure if they're still able to facilitate that trade. This was the problem that I was having with Nick Claxton and for Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade. They had to take back like $9 million less than what they were taking in. So, or I'm sorry, they had to take back $9 million less than what they were giving out. So, like, let's say Kuminga got a $28 million a year deal, they'd only be able to bring back a guy on a $19 to $20 million deal. So, I think that's a similar situation with Milwaukee. And because Thomas is likely to get between that 17 to 22 range, Kuzma's making 22 million this year. I don't know if they'd be able to financially do that. If it was an unprotected first and a swap first plus Kuzma for Cam Thomas, then I'd be interested. Only because, again, 2 first-round picks to a team that's likely to not have Giannis by next season, I could get behind that. But as of right now, no, I wouldn't just do Kuminga in a 2031 for him.
I get that. If this is a package for the Nets to potentially do a sign and trade with Cam Thomas, I don't think there's a point in signing and trading him.
Yeah.
Like this doesn't make me like Kyle Kuzma. I don't think is a good NBA player. And what is another first round pick at this point with all the picks the Nets have? Like this is not. I don't feel confident in this. Like at this point, I'd rather just ride it out the whole season. I think what you get out of Cam Thomas is better than whatever you get in return out of this deal. That's the way I look at it. Conqueror, Nets still have $17 million in not even cap space. They're $17 million below the cap floor. They need to spend $17 million. Can flip Terrence Mann, Keon Johnson, Tyrese Martin for Kuminga on a $25-30 million deal, and then re-sign Kuminga on the same.
So I actually don't think you can do that because I'm pretty sure when you trade for a player, they fall into that recently traded rule where you can't package that player with another current player on your roster to send out. The only way that you can flip Terrence Mann is by trading him straight up for something. Whether that's 2 players that you're getting back in return for his price tag, or if it's a player who's also making $15.5 million. But you can't package up Terrence Mann with a player currently on the Nets because he was just recently traded for.
Interesting. Yeah, I think Terrence Mann is here. I don't get it. Like, would you consider buying out Terrence Mann, or is the contract just way too steep?
It's a 3-year, $15.5 million deal, and if you look at his time with the Clippers, he did showcase a lot of high upside. I still think that he could be a really good high caliber role player in this league.
I don't think he's Brooklyn, though. I think he could help a team contend.
Yeah, he could help a team contend, and which is why you could maybe see him as a trade deadline, potential flip. But overall, I don't think he's going anywhere before the season begins, and I don't think that it's necessary to want to move off of him so quickly, especially with it being a 3-year deal. Maybe next season, if you want to move off of it for an expiring contract, it makes more sense because it fits the time frame of the Nets in that 2027 free agency class. But as of right now, I wouldn't necessarily get rid of him right away.
Interesting. I agree with what you're saying there. Conqueror confirms he meant re-signing Cam Thomas on the same deal. So keeping Kuminga and trading for Kuminga, and keeping Cam Thomas was the scenario that Conqueror was floating out there.
The only problem with it that I see is, again, now you have Cam Thomas at the 2, you have Demon at the 1, and you have Kuminga at the 3 with Michael Porter at the 4. Is Claxton on the team? Because at that point now you're looking at maybe a 10 through 12 seed. The goal.
Yeah, I think that team would be a play-in team personally.
And that's the thing, right? Is the goal of this season is still to be a bottom 5 team, so you can get that top 5 pick, right?
Realistically, I don't think this team's trying to tank though. Like I don't think the Nets.
I just don't know where it wins, right? Because let's think about the East right now. Realistically, a healthy Charlotte team is far better than us. Can we agree on that? They got LaMelo,
I don't know about
they got
far
Brandon
better.
Miller.
I mean, these are a bunch of guys who haven't been able to gel together or play together yet.
I wouldn't say so much gel. It's just they haven't been able to stay healthy, right? And that's why I more so think like if you can give them Nick Claxton, that gives them the ability to be a really high caliber team in this league, whether it be playing or bottom end playoff team. If they were to say they get Claxton for Grant Williams and Josh Green, their starting 5 would be LaMelo, Con Kneppel, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, and Claxton. That's a very versatile and impressive team to put out there.
I think if you go through the teams in the East, I think the Nets are light years better than the Wizards. I still don't think the Wizards.
Oh, I completely disagree. Because if you really look at that rotation, right, you have C.J. McCollum now. You have Chris Middleton, right?
Chris Middleton was averaging 12 points a game, 12, 14 points per game last year.
That's more than about half of our roster.
On a $30 million team option.
Well, that's the problem, though, right? That 12, 14 a game was more than half of our roster.
I mean, that's fair, but this team was completely different last year. This team didn't have an NPJ to shoot the 3 ball for you. I mean, you can argue Cam Johnson, but I still think MPJ is a far better player than Cam Johnson is. He's able to play make for you. He's able to get rebounds.
I agree.
And
I
keep in mind,
completely agree.
this team wasn't the Nets won. I think if Cam Thomas was healthy last year, the Nets would have won 30 games.
I could have seen 31, yeah. But so here's my thing, right? I personally think Charlotte has the better roster than Brooklyn as of right now, just because you also have to base it on the depth of the rotation. When you have guys in the league who are in their first season, these aren't guys who don't. These aren't guys who know how to win games late down the stretch. They don't know how to win those bench minutes. And when you bring youth in at this level, you're probably looking at more losses because of the inexperience. Washington, to me, you have Marcus Smart, you have C.J. McCollum, you have Chris Middleton. You still have a young core of Trey Johnson, Bilal Coulibaly, Bub Carrington, Alex Sarr, right? You still have Corey Kispert on the roster as of right now. Like that's a deep team in a weak East, you know.
It's a deep team, but like how much value? I just don't think those veterans are giving you much value. I don't think Marcus Smart is really anything at this point in his career, other than maybe you can consider him somewhat of a stingy defender. I think Chris Middleton is gone by the deadline. I don't think
agree.
Chris Middleton is there after
that's
the
the thing, though.
deadline.
Could they? My thing is do they flip him because they have Smart, McCollum, and
What's the
Middleton on
point of keeping
expiring
Chris Middleton on a $30 million
expiring?
player
They're
option?
going to have $75+ million in cap space just because of Middleton, McCollum, and Smart next year. McCollum's on a $30+ million deal, Middleton's on a $30+ million deal, and Smart's on a $21.5 million. So they're actually looking at north of $80+ million in cap space just off of those three players.
They're going to be like the Nets. They're going to be like the Nets next offseason.
That's what I'm saying, and that's why I think that they're going to be a borderline play-in team, just because they have their depth is more experienced than a lot of these other teams in the East, but they also have a young core that's a little bit more developed than what, let's just say, the Nets have, or
the
maybe
young
what
core is more
Chicago
developed
has.
because they were in the league last year. Like I think
Exactly,
Coulibaly is a great player. I think Bub Carrington's okay. I don't think Bub Carrington.
I really liked Carrington coming out of the draft.
I like Carrington. I just don't think that the fact that Wizards fans are signing off on him being a starting forward next year, I just don't think that's.
I don't think he's the starting lead guard as of yet. He has the potential to be, but again, I think mix and matching that youth with the role players that they have, the vets, I think that's going to be great for them because it kind of allows.
I think the Wizards are going to be in a spot like I think the Nets are winning 30, 33 games this season.
I got them at 20,
yeah,
21.
I know we're completely
because right now, if I'm looking at the East, right, you have Cleveland that's going to be better. You have New York, you have Indiana, you have Detroit, you have Orlando, you have Atlanta, you have Toronto, who's going to be healthy this year with Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, and as of right now, R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, and Jakob Poeltl. That seems far better than us. Philly. Embiid's going to be healthy at the start of the season, as of right now, at least. You also just brought in Edgecombe. You have Jared McCain coming back healthy. You have Maxey.
I mean, here's the thing. Sorry, again, I don't mean to cut you off. But here's the thing, though. It's so hard to predict schedules. I learned it in football. I mean, Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles 4 plays into the game in a year.
Yeah.
Where most pundits had the Jets winning, at least making a Super Bowl run or a deep playoff run. I digress. Anyways, in the NBA, who expects the Sixers to win 25 games last year?
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? You have those certain.
Who expected the Nets to start 10-8 last year? I didn't. I thought they had a better chance of starting
about 2-10.
Yeah, I was talking to Sarah Kustok last summer, and I was like, "There's a chance this team starts 0-9, 0-10," and she's like, "I completely agree with you." I was like, "No one predicted them to start 10. It's so difficult to predict schedules." Right now, I would put the Nets over the Wizards. I would put the Nets up to par with the Hornets. I'd put the Nets up to par with the Sixers. I'd say the Raptors are better, and I'd say the Nets could be just as good as the Bulls. I mean,
the only team that I even see being remote competition with the Nets, I genuinely think the Nets are going to be the 15th seed in the East next year. I have their ceiling at 12th seed. And that's just being nice because if there is a team or two that's injured and decides to bottom out, the only teams that I can see even being remotely close to Brooklyn is Miami, Chicago, and Indiana. I think that's that race between 12 through 15 next year. And again, the only reason I say that Toronto's healthier and they have more star power, Philly healthy with more star power, Charlotte, if they're healthy, they have a better rotation. Washington, same thing.
Are the Sixers really healthy, though? Because, Joel Embiid is going to be Joel Embiid no matter what.
And that's the problem, right? If you could just get Joel Embiid healthy for 45 games next season, Philly, please do us all the favor, because we know that you'll be 20-15, 20-20 in that range, whatever. That'll be far better than anything that we're going to be, and you'll probably have a good enough cushion to where you're not close to us. But, yeah, I see it being a 4-man race for the 12 through 15 seed with Indiana, Chicago, Miami, and Brooklyn. I think those are the 4 worst teams in the East next year.
Do you think the Wizards are a play-in team?
I think the Wizards are a playing team. I really do. I think
so a
they're
lot of my
doing everything
friends,
right.
a
I
lot of
really
my
do think they're
friends are
doing everything
Wizards fans, and their worst nightmare is being a playing team.
100%, because why would you want to be when you have 3 number 1 overall prospects who could, like, there's no clear set in stone number 1 pick next year. This isn't like last year where we all
People are
knew
saying
Cooper Flag was the
Debansa,
guy.
but it's like people are saying Debansa is the number 1 guy, and
Oh, I think
everyone's
it's
like,
Peterson right now, and a lot of people think it's Boozer.
I don't
Oh, if you
follow.
haven't started getting into the
Yeah.
2026 draft class, I mean, dude, I have a spreadsheet open right now
See,
on
yeah,
my
that's like me
computer
with the
where I
NFL
have,
draft. Like I've already started summer
yeah,
scouting on the
I have
quarterbacks.
34 players currently already on my board.
That's
Like,
that's crazy. Yeah, I mean the
yeah,
way the way I look at it is I was talking to some of my friends who are Wizards fans the other
mhm.
day, and they were like, I was like, this Whitmore trade, you could be a playing team. They're like, give me. I want to finish last and give me Debansa. I'm like, unfortunately, that's not how it works in the NBA. Like
Yeah,
your team the Nets could be the 15th seed and have the 6th overall pick. That's what
yeah.
happened with the Wizards
Well,
last
so
year.
that's the other thing too, right? Is if you're looking at the West, right? OKC is not going anywhere. Houston got better. Los Angeles still has LeBron and Luka. You know they're going to be a minimum of a play-in team. Denver got 10 times better this offseason. I have OKC, Houston, and Denver as the only 3 teams that can make it out of the West as of right now. Clippers
Fair.
are still very good. Minnesota is still very good. Golden State is still Golden State. They're going to be your play-in playoff team. Not make it far, but they're still there. Memphis, they may take a dip. Sacramento may suck. Dallas, I think they're going to actually be surprising next season with Cooper Flag as a rookie. It reminds me a lot of Tatum's rookie season in Boston. I almost said Brooklyn because he was supposed to be our pick. It kind of reminds me a lot of him in Boston, where Gordon Hayward got hurt, Tatum got an extended amount of minutes, Kyrie then ended up getting hurt, and then Tatum went off, right? And that's kind of where his career started. It reminds me a lot of that with Cooper Flag in Dallas. So I think Dallas is going to be very good. Phoenix, I see taking a similar approach at that like 9 through 12 seed. Portland, I think, could improve. San Antonio healthy can definitely improve from the 13th spot. New Orleans healthy can definitely improve from the 14th spot. So to me, right now, the worst 5 teams in basketball next season, of course, injury free, turn the injuries off on 2K. Worst 5 teams in basketball: Utah, Sacramento, Brooklyn, Indiana, and probably Chicago. I think those are the 5 worst teams in basketball next year.
I'm not a big tank person. I just don't
Mm-hmm.
think tanking really works I know you're a way bigger tank guy than I am.
Yeah.
I don't like tanking because number one, like I always go back to the fan example. Like I can't root for the Nets to lose. I understand people who say, well, it benefits them in the long term. Like I can't go to a Nets game or turn on a Nets game and like actively root for them to throw the win.
I
It's
completely
something
hear
in
you,
me.
dude.
Like I understand that people are like, but it helps them long term. But they lose now, it's gonna help them long term. It's like I can't get that out of my head. I
Yeah.
can't wrap my head around the fact like
When you and that's the thing, right? And our age gap is definitely much different, right? When you watch a team for 23 years never win a championship, when the only time they were in a championship game, I was 1 and 2 years old, right? You don't remember these things. You can't remember when you were 1 and 2 years old. The fact that I haven't seen the championship in my lifetime considerably, that's what makes me want to do this, because it's like, all right, I've seen a rebuild with no picks of our own that turned into 2 superstars who then went on to win a championship, right? That was Boston. I saw the rebuild with no picks of our own. We built a playoff team and then we went all in, right? I saw a championship caliber team never even make it to an Eastern Conference Finals. So I've seen every avenue but building through the draft, which has seemingly happened to work for every other team that's won a championship over the past couple of years, right? Denver drafted their entire core. Boston drafted their entire core. They made the trades necessary afterwards to win it. Indiana, they made trades. They're that anomaly, right? Where their 2-star players were traded for. But that's seldom. Like that doesn't really happen very often. Golden State drafted Steph, drafted Clay, drafted Draymond. They brought KD and built a dynasty, right? You have to, how I look at it is one of 2 routes. You have to draft your 2 superstars and trade for that final piece after, or you need to draft your superstar and trade for your 2 final pieces after, right? And with the Nets owning their next 2 picks, meaning this year and then of course next year, you have to get your 2 guys in this draft, right? Demon could be your 3rd option. But next year, you need top 3, and you need to get that guy that can be your 1st or 2nd option before you look to trade for a star. because then you have the foundation, then you're ready to go. But I think the difference in why I myself am more of a guy that wants to tank. I don't want to cheer against my team. I literally said it all 82 games this year. Like, this was miserable because I'm hoping for an outcome that I would not regularly hope for, and they were still messing it up. Like, I wanted them to lose, and I hate losing, but they weren't even losing properly. Like,
they couldn't even
it
do what
was,
you wanted.
yeah, it was. Listen, I wanted them to win championships. They couldn't do that with 3 Hall of Famers, and now I want them to lose with a bottom 3 roster in basketball, and they couldn't even do that properly. Like, realistically, the reason why I want to tank is because I worry about the floor of the pick more than I do the ceiling of the pick. If you're the worst team in basketball, the worst pick you get is 5, right? 5 this year gets you Ace Bailey. 5 this year could get you Jeremiah Fears, right? But instead you picked 8 because you finished 6th. And what did 8 get you? Yegor Demon,
I mean,
right?
if you
And I
could,
think that's
like,
where
if you
that
could
matters.
finish in that range, like where
If
the
you can
Nets.
finish 1 through 4, I'm very, very confident in
What
Brooklyn
I
getting
was
it
what
back.
I was saying is, like, if the Nets, this is my thought process. If the Nets could finish in the range they did, like 10 to 12. The thing is, I didn't see too much promising basketball down the stretch. I want to see promising basketball down the stretch if you're going to finish in that range. I mean, I always say this team has so many picks. Like, if they're really in love with Debanza and they finish with the 6th or Peterson and they finish with the 6th or 7th overall pick, you could package some of your picks together this year, along with maybe a Nick Claxton if he remains on this team, and try to make a deal to go up and get your guy if you're really, enamored and in love with
The
Debanza
only
Patterson.
problem with that, though, is when you have players of that caliber, 9 times out of 10, you're not trading that pick. Dylan Harper
Sure.
has no right to be in San Antonio right now. It makes no sense for San Antonio or for Dylan Harper. It's going to completely ruin the development of him and Castle, and I truly believe that. What they're talking about putting Castle at the 3 next year, putting Fox at the 1 and Harper at the 2. That's going to diminish any form of development that you're looking into for those guys. That's exactly why, though, you can't have the mindset of, yeah, we can just trade up for a pick, because you've seen opportunities where teams don't need certain guys, but they still draft them because it's the best player available, right? And that's the problem. When you have 3 guys who are number 1 overall caliber picks, no team's going to pass on them. Like, I can guarantee you right now, if Boston loses in the play-in and they get a lottery pick, I'll guarantee you right now they get a top 3 pick, because the league loves them. The league loves teams who are injured, who are championship caliber teams, who need to get bailed out. They love it. They just did it with San Antonio for 3 straight years. They just did it with Philly, who purposely tanked and was investigated for it, and they still gave them the 3rd overall pick. They just did it with Dallas. If you're telling me that that wasn't a backdoor deal, hey, go trade your superstar that you took in the top 5 a couple of years ago, who just so happens to be a top 5 player in basketball. Go ship him out to our most valuable organization around the league. Go send him to the Lakers, and we'll give you the number 1 pick.
Tank it,
Like,
like, my whole the bottom line that we all come
that's
back to
crazy.
on this. Yeah, I get it. The bottom line that we all come back to on this, though, is like tanking typically doesn't work.
No, and you're right, and it doesn't, and that's where I kind of more so, I don't think of it as tanking. I'm looking at the floor of the pick, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the worst pick that you would want to draft at? Would you rather pick at 5 but be the worst team in basketball, or would you rather pick at 9 and be the 6th worst team in basketball?
6th worst team, you'd be a play-in team, 9 seed. Wait, 6th worst team in the East or
No,
basketball?
I'm talking draft odds, right? Like, this year we had the 6th worst draft odds, but we finished with the 8th pick. The worst that you can get with the 6 odds is 9th,
It
right?
depends on the draft class for me, really. I haven't done any research into this draft class.
Oh,
In
dude, if
this
you thought
draft
this
class,
draft class was good, next year's better. Next year's
I
far
really
better.
didn't. I thought this year's draft class was top heavy.
Really? Oh, I thought that there was a lot of hidden gems later in the rounds, but the problem is a lot of guys went back to school. Like Yaxel Lendeborg, Boogie Flan, um, Xavier Lee. There was a bunch of guys later in the rounds that I was looking at who I was like, oh, this is going to be great. At 36, you could probably find a guy who in the 2024 draft class could have been a top 30 pick, but instead a lot of them went back to school. So that's kind of why next year's draft class is looking even better, because I already have 20 to 25 names that I'm looking at in 2026, but you also have those 10 to 12 guys who went back this year who you're now going to have next year. So, and that's not even counting 2nd round hidden gems that you could
Mhm.
possibly be seeing. So I'm like, right now you could genuinely see 40 really high caliber players
I thought
in
there.
next year's draft.
I think there were 5 to 8 really, really. I don't want to say generational because
Hmm.
I'm not a huge fan of that word, but like
Yeah.
highly touted players in this year's draft class who could be like superstars.
Yeah,
And-
like
and-
I made a notes list. This is expanding upon my spreadsheet. This is 60 names
oh,
of 2026 draft prospects. I mean, just the first, let's see, just the first 17 of them are 2026 prospects. You also have Isaiah Evans, LeBaron Filan, Bennett Sturts, Tahad Pettiford, JT Toppin, Yaxel Lendeborg, Alex Condon, Boogie Flan, Ian Jackson. These are all guys who were supposed to go in this year's draft, right? You now add that to the pool of next year on top of other guys who are going to be rising their draft stocks. Next year's class is massive, right? So Brooklyn, as of right now, has 3 second-round picks and a first. You know, like I said, it is top 3 heavy in next year's class where your top 3 are number 1 overall options. But after that, you're still finding second, third, fourth options left and right.
That's the way I kind of look at this year.
Yeah.
Like I think.
Yeah, I think Harper and Flagg were the only guys that you can really consider to be number 1 options.
Yeah, I think if Malawach had a little more time to develop, he could have. I'm a huge Malawach.
The problem is Duke doesn't really develop centers to the best of their ability. They're very wing heavy, right?
Like LSU is wide receiver academy for football. That's what Duke is.
Exactly. Yeah, like if you look at Duke, they've had Brandon Ingram, they've had Paolo, they've had Flagg, they've had Tatum. Like
even Jared McCain just a few years ago developed a number 2. Like
yeah, they're a very they're a very guard or wing heavy school. They don't really look at the center position as like this needs to be our number 1 guy. That's usually their third or fourth guy. Like Kaman was what the 4th option considerably. I would actually say the 5th option.
I didn't watch Duke last year.
I'm a Duke guy, so like I would probably say Malawach was the 5th option last year because you had Flagg as the number 1, Proctor is the number 2, Kneppel is the number 3. And then you had Sion James as the number 4, who went 33rd overall to Charlotte.
And obviously, Malawach is going to fall down the list when you have like such a sharp shooter like Kneppel on your team. Like,
it definitely makes it more difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I completely agree. It's going to be interesting the next year because we're now going to have to play this game again where my fandom's put to the test. It's always fun.
Yeah. All right, Dylan, do you have you for a few more questions here?
Yeah. Feel free, man.
All right, perfect. So let's see. I know where we were in the chat. I missed it. I saw someone chime in about a potential Domantas Sabonis trade. I'm trying to find that in the chat right now. Oh, here it is. What would a Sabonis to BK trade look like? Now, this is a topic that Josh and I touched on in our first actual ever official video on this channel 3 weeks ago, a month ago now at this point. He has a big contract, so the contract would certainly come into play, but it would probably look like, I'd say, Dylan, Claxton and 2 first-round picks while taking into account that you're picking up that crazy salary.
It's so tough because, like, all right, it's interesting the Sabonis fit, right? Because Jordi Fernandez has coached Jokic and Sabonis, right? And that's why I'm so intrigued by the Danny Wolf pick. But if you're bringing Sabonis to Brooklyn, you have to think it's tough. I would probably say Cam Thomas and no, it would probably be
because they have De'Aaron Fox as their like main one option.
Yes, they would need a center. Yeah, probably Nick Claxton.
Would you do Claxton and 3 firsts?
I don't think Sabonis is worth 3 firsts to me, just because if you're
I think Sabonis is worth 2 firsts.
If you're talking like let's just say Demon pans out, right, and he looks great. Let's just say you get the number 2 overall pick next year and you land Boozer or Debansta, right? Let's just say Boozer or Debansta turns into a superstar as well. If you have Demon as your star, Boozer or Debansta as your superstar, and then you look into Sabonis, I would give up 3 first-round picks because that would be your missing piece, right?
He doesn't really fit the timeline right now.
That's the exact point. Is I'm not giving up any assets for a guy who doesn't fit what we're trying to accomplish right now. If he's available in 2 years, and we have 2 guys that we drafted who are superstar level players, and that's the missing piece that you think is the guy to put us over the edge, by all means, then I'm cool with paying 3 first-round picks. But to do that now, definitely not. No.
Yeah, I just think Sabonis is such a good player. I think someone who could shoot the 3 ball like that at his size, can rebound like him. I mean, this guy was led the league in rebounds, I believe, last season while shooting the 3 ball at a very, very, very high mark. Like, I think we need more centers like that at the NBA level. I think that's exactly what So Sabonis is. We'll wrap up today's almost hour and a half show with a draft question from Brooklyn Go Crazy CJ. I think he's actually talking about, what about Mikel Brown Jr.?
Very interesting prospect. I believe he's a bit undersized, if I'm not mistaken, for a point guard. Right? He falls in that like 6'3", 6'4" range, but he's very versatile and athletic. I like his game. I'm not sure if I'm going to put him in the top 5 yet as of right now. I know that he's rising up draft boards already, but to me, the top 4 is set. It's whatever order you want to put the top 3 in Peterson, Boozer, and Debansta. And then I think Nate Ament is your 4th overall pick as of right now. The 5th spot is definitely up in the air, but if I had to put somebody there, I'd probably put one of either Kareem Lopez, Chris Sinak, Jaden Quinnance, or maybe Mikel Brown. So like he's definitely a top 8 guy as of right now. It just depends on what that 5 through 8 range is looking like. But he would be interesting. I don't know if he would fit with this current roster right now because again, you just drafted 3 point guards. I really don't think there's a necessary need to bring in a guy like Brown next year. The only guard that I would even look to draft next year is Peterson, and that's just because he can play the 2.
Interesting. There we go. Brooklyn Go Crazy CJ. That's your answer on Mikel Brown. I mean, I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot about the prospects, certainly as the season comes closer, and obviously as the season begins to get into full swing. But Dylan, really appreciate you sparing some time. Really appreciate you hopping on with us. I know we mentioned multiple times throughout the show, but let everyone know where they can find you and air out all your final thoughts right here on the show before we do wrap up.
Definitely, man. And again, I appreciate you for having me on. This was awesome. We'll definitely have to get something going here again shortly. But feel free to follow me on Instagram at NetsPress. We just hit 21,000 the other day, so I appreciate everybody for growing this fan base and community some more. All of my content's over there. You'll see everything. But you can also feel free to follow me on Twitter at NetsPressIG. I kind of just bullshit around over there, so don't take me seriously. I like to troll and have fun over there, but yeah, that's where you can find me. And then, of course, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube at the BK Nothing But Nets podcast. I'm your co-host over there along with Gary from 3D Boxing. So make sure to subscribe to us over there as well.
Subscribe to BK Nothing But Nets. Dylan and Gary, always great guys, always willing to come on with me. So make sure to subscribe to them. Follow Dylan on Instagram. Follow Dylan on Twitter. Like and subscribe right here on the Brooklyn Boys Show. We appreciate all your support. Appreciate all you guys helping this channel grow. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It is completely free, and it really does help us grow significantly. We'll be back. Listen to this, everyone, tomorrow, 1 p.m. EST. Tim McMahon of ESPN will be kind enough to grace us with his presence. So an inside scoop on what's really been going on behind the scenes with the Brooklyn Nets coming up tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So like the video and subscribe to receive notifications on when that stream actually goes live. And that will be at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So definitely stay tuned for that and all the fun plans we have coming up here on the show. Appreciate you all joining us as always. Hope everyone had a great 4th of July. Hope everyone had a great weekend. For Dylan, I am Connor, signing off right here on the Brooklyn Boys Show. And as always, go Nets.